They call it chemistry. That rush when you meet someone whose silence feels like a mystery waiting to be solved. The way your heart quickens when they look away, as if their distance itself is a language. You long to translate, but beneath that spark, beneath the thrill of wanting is something quieter, something older. It's the illusion of the chase. Subtle belief that the harder someone is to reach, the more valuable their love must be. That if you can just make them choose you, you'll finally be enough. It begins early, often without us realizing. The child who grew up earning affection through good grades, quiet obedience, or a smile that said, "See, I'm easy to love," learns to equate effort with worth. So when that child grows into an adult, love becomes a performance, desire becomes pursuit, and the people who are hard to reach become magnetic, not because they're better, but because they awaken the same ache that once defined what love meant. At first, the chase feels intoxicating. The silence between texts, the half smiles, the small gestures that make you believe you're getting closer. You tell yourself this is connection, but really, it's tension. It's uncertainty dressed up as romance. You start to read meaning into every pause, every delayed reply, every almost confession. You become fluent in decoding because deep down, you've always had to guess how love feels. And the more uncertain they are, the more certain you become that they must be special. This is how the illusion sustains itself. It's not about them at all. It's about the emotional familiarity of longing. The same kind of longing that once made you feel alive, even when it hurt. Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that keeps people addicted to uncertainty. When affection comes and goes unpredictably, your brain releases more dopamine in the in-between, making the rare moments of closeness feel euphoric. You mistake the relief of being chosen for the experience of being loved. But what you're actually addicted to is hope. Hope that one day, your effort will be enough. Hope that if you keep showing your worth, they'll finally see you the way you see them. And in that hope, you disappear. It's a quiet tragedy. The way people lose themselves trying to earn love that was never supposed to be earned. Because love, when it's real, doesn't need convincing. It doesn't keep you anxious or guessing. Doesn't ask you to shrink so you can fit into someone else's comfort zone. But when you're still living through old emotional patterns, you mistake anxiety for passion. You confuse the fear of losing someone with the depth of connection. And slowly, you stop asking whether this love feels safe. You only ask whether it feels strong. But strength and safety are not the same. Intensity is not intimacy, and the chase is not love. It's just repetition, a familiar dance between two people reenacting their own emotional wounds. One runs because closeness feels dangerous. The other chases because distance feels unbearable. And together, they call it love. But one day, something changes. It's quiet. Almost unnoticeable at first. You wake up one morning and realize you're tired. Not of them, but of the emotional noise inside yourself. The constant proving, the constant wondering, the constant waiting for someone else to tell you you're worthy of stillness. You start to see the pattern. You start to see yourself in it. And for the first time, you understand that the chase was never about finding someone. It was about finding peace within your own heart. The part of you that no longer needs to run after love to feel whole. That's when the illusion begins to fade because understanding isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's the moment you realize that love isn't something to win. It's something to witness, to nurture, to allow. And once you see that clearly, you can never return to the chase again. There's a kind of silence men learn early in life. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, suffocating quiet of unspoken things. It begins in childhood when a boy cries and is told, "Be strong." When fear is met with teasing, when tenderness is mistaken for weakness. So he learns. He learns to swallow what hurts, to clench his jaw until emotion becomes muscle memory. He learns that tears are dangerous, that softness is something to hide, that his worth will always be measured in how little he reveals. And that's how a boy becomes a man. Not by understanding himself, but by erasing parts of himself that the world said were unmanly. You see, men don't stop feeling. They just stop showing it. Every man carries a private language, a vocabulary of silence and avoidance, of late-night scrolling and empty stares at the ceiling. It's how he says I'm overwhelmed. It's how he says I don't know who I am without the mask, but most people never hear that language because it's quiet. Because it doesn't sound like sadness or fear, so it sounds like withdrawal, distraction, indifference, and so women in turn misread it. They think he's uninterested, cold, detached. But what if he's not? What if he's just scared to be seen? Psychologically, men are not built to be emotionless. They've simply been trained to believe that safety lives on the surface, that control equals competence, that love is something to protect others from, not something to surrender to. Studies in emotional socialization show that from as early as age 5, boys receive less empathy, less nurturing, and fewer words to name their emotions than girls. By the time they reach adolescence, most can identify only 2 states, anger and calm. Everything else becomes buried somewhere between the two. So when a man falls in love, it's not that he doesn't feel deeply, it's that he's terrified of the depth itself. To him, vulnerability feels like exposure, a loss of control, a risk of shame, and shame for men is a quiet killer. It's the invisible force that whispers, if they see the real you, they'll stop respecting you. That's why he may retreat when things get emotionally close, not because he doesn't care, but because he cares too much, and caring makes him feel helpless. When he pulls away, he's often not rejecting you. He's protecting the fragile boy inside him, who never learned how to stay open in the face of love. And when he seems distant, it's not always disinterest. Sometimes it's confusion, because no one ever showed him how to be both strong and soft at once. He doesn't know how to say, I want to be close, but I don't know how to let you in without losing myself. So instead, he goes silent. He buries emotion beneath work, humor, or distraction. He becomes what the world calls stoic, even though inside, there's a quiet longing to be understood without having to explain. This is the hidden language of men, the pauses between their words, the sighs after long days, the eyes that dart away when love feels too real. They speak it not through confessions, but through presence, through doing rather than saying, through small acts that whisper what their voices can't carry. And if you listen closely, if you can see past the armor and the silence, you'll find that most men aren't emotionally unavailable. They're emotionally untranslatable. They want to love, but in a world that taught them to fear their own hearts, they simply don't know how to be fluent in feeling. And so, love between men and women often becomes a miscommunication. One speaks in emotion, the other in action, both trying to be understood, both missing the other's native tongue. But when understanding replaces judgment, when you stop taking his silence personally and start hearing it as a language born of protection, everything begins to soften. Because love, in its purest form, is not found in expression, it's found in patience. In seeing someone for what they're still afraid to show, emotional. Distance is rarely about disinterest. It's a survival instinct, an invisible reflex built to protect what once hurt too much to feel. When a man withdraws, he isn't always walking away from you. Sometimes, he's walking back toward the only safety he's ever known. Silence. That silence isn't a lack of emotion. It's the sound of overthinking. It's the brain whispering, don't say too much. Don't feel too deeply. Don't lose control again. Psychologists call this avoidant attachment. It's a defense pattern that forms when a child learns that emotional closeness often leads to pain, confusion, or rejection. Maybe his caregivers were loving but unpredictable, warm one day, distant the next. Maybe his needs were met with guilt. Maybe he was praised for being independent but shamed for needing affection. Over time, he learned to equate love with instability, and so, distance became safety. He learned that if he wanted to stay safe, he had to stay hidden. And now, as an adult, he confuses emotional intimacy with danger, because to him, opening up doesn't mean connection, it means exposure. When he meets someone who genuinely cares for him, something paradoxical happens inside him. He wants to be close, but closeness activates old alarms. He craves affection, but affection feels like a test. He fears being misunderstood, but also fears being seen too clearly. So he stays halfway in, half present, half protected. You might feel it as inconsistency. The mixed signals, the push and pull, the tenderness followed by retreat. But underneath that inconsistency lives a very specific emotional logic. If I let them too close, I'll lose myself. If I stay too far, I'll lose them. So I'll hover here in the middle, where no one can really hurt me.